The first time Henry Whitaker tried to introduce me to his daughter, I was holding up 6 feet of cedar fence with my shoulder bleeding through one glove and wondering whether a 70B concrete footing could legally be considered attempted murder. Henry stood on the other side of the broken panel, studying me with the calm expression of a man who had seen worse situations and felt no need to hurry. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. "Unless it's a paramedic, this may not be the moment." Then a woman behind me said, "He usually waits until after dessert to ambush people." I turned too quickly. The fence shifted. She stepped forward and planted both hands against the post beside mine. For one strange second, we were shoulder to shoulder, holding up the same piece of someone else's life. And that was how mine began changing. My name is Jake Thornton. I was 29, worked as a custom cabinet maker, and lived alone in a small brick house outside Richmond that I had bought because it needed repairs. That probably tells you more about me than I intended. I liked damaged things with obvious solutions. Loose hinges, warped drawers, rotten porch boards. People were harder. People could look straight at you and say forever, then return a ring 3 months before the wedding, because forever had started to feel too predictable. 2 years later, predictable sounded pretty good to me. Henry was 67 and lived next door. He was an Army veteran, a retired high school history teacher, and the only man I knew who ironed his yard work shirts. We had been neighbors for 11 months, which meant we had progressed from polite nods to borrowing tools without pretending it was an emergency. The storm the night before had taken down a maple limb and crushed one section of his back fence. At 7 that Saturday morning, I found him outside trying to lift a panel by himself. "Henry, put that down. I have it. You're standing on the gate." He looked at his boot, then at me. Temporary complication. I had learned that Henry would accept help only if I made it sound like he was doing me a favor, so I told him I needed an excuse to test a new impact driver. "That thing has been on the market for 4 years," he said. "Still new to me." He almost smiled. By 10, we had removed the broken boards and set 2 fresh posts. Henry worked steadily, but I noticed him rubbing his left knee whenever he thought I wasn't looking. I handed him the measuring tape and took over the digging without commenting. Around noon, he disappeared inside and returned with 2 lemonades. "You always this quiet?" he asked. "Only around people who ask questions." "That explains why you're single." I nearly dropped my cup. That was efficient. I spent 30 years teaching teenagers. I can identify avoidance at 50 yards. Before I could defend myself, a silver hatchback pulled into his driveway. Henry checked his watch. That should have warned me. We were attaching the last new panel when one of the clamps slipped. I caught the fence. The edge of a board cut through my glove. And Henry chose that exact moment to announce that there was someone he wanted me to meet. The woman who came through the side gate wore jeans, white sneakers, and a rust-colored blouse with the sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her dark blonde hair was twisted into a loose knot that seemed one impatient movement away from falling apart. She had hazel eyes, a small scar through one eyebrow, and the kind of face that didn't wait for permission to be expressive. She also had both hands pressed against the fence beside mine. "Dad," she said, "would you mind securing this before your introduction kills him?" Henry calmly reset the clamp. The weight lifted from my shoulder. The woman stayed close enough that I caught the clean citrus scent of her shampoo. "This is my daughter," Claire Henry said. "She's 28. "Dad, what? It's relevant information to a census taker." I laughed before I could stop myself. Claire looked at me, and something warm entered her expression. "You must be Jake." "That depends on what he's told you. That you build furniture, make coffee strong enough to dissolve metal, and refuse to charge elderly neighbors for emergency repairs?" Henry frowned. "I am not elderly. You keep a bowl of hard candy by the door. That's hospitality." Claire turned back to me. "He likes you." "I'm starting to suspect that." Henry picked up the level. "I'm standing right here. Yet somehow this still feels like a conversation about you," she said. She crouched to inspect the bottom rail. I tried not to notice how easily she made herself part of the job instead of standing aside. She asked sensible questions, held the panel steady, and caught an incorrect measurement before either Henry or I did. "You're enjoying that," I told her. Being right. Watching two men realize you're right? Very much. Her smile landed harder than it should have. Claire was a physical therapist at a rehabilitation clinic in Raleigh, Henry explained, though she quickly pointed out that she was capable of introducing herself. She had driven up for the weekend because Henry had mentioned the storm, but neglected to mention the fence. He said one branch came down. She told me one large branch, Henry corrected. It crushed 40 feet of fence. Still, one branch. By the time we finished, afternoon light had turned the fresh cedar gold. Henry went inside to find bandages for my hand, leaving Claire and me near the gate. She leaned against the new post and studied the straight fence line. You do good work. You sound surprised. My father described you as adequate. From him, that's basically a standing ovation. I pulled off my torn glove. He described you as someone I should meet. Her cheeks colored slightly, but she held my gaze. He's been trying to arrange that for 6 months. That surprised me. He's never mentioned you. He thinks subtlety means taking half a year to set the trap and walking me into it with a fence. He was probably hoping for better clothes. I looked down at my sawdust-covered shirt. This is my formal lumber attire. She laughed, then reached for my hand. The movement was so natural that I let her take it. Her fingers would cool against my palm as she examined the cut. It wasn't serious, but she didn't release me immediately. Her thumb rested just beneath my knuckles, and when she looked up, the humor between us softened into something quieter. You always show up when he needs help, she asked. Most of the time, he pretends he doesn't. I know, her voice lowered. Thank you for noticing anyway. There was affection in her face, but also exhaustion, as if she had spent a long time worrying from a distance. I like him, I said, even when he insults my coffee. He insults mine too. That's practically family status. Henry called from the kitchen, asking where he had put the first aid kit. Claire didn't look away from me. Would you come to dinner tonight, she asked. Dad's making chili, which means I'll be doing most of the cooking while he gives instructions. Is this part of the ambush? Probably. Her thumb moved once across my palm before she let go. But I'm asking for myself. That made my answer easy. Then yes. Henry appeared at the back door, holding the first aid kit like a trophy. Good. 6:30. Claire closed her eyes. Were you listening? It's my yard. He went back inside, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Claire watched him leave, but her smile faded. She lowered her voice. There's something he hasn't told you. I glanced toward the house. About dinner. About why he wanted us to meet now. She folded her arms, suddenly guarded. Dad thinks I came home for the weekend. And you didn't. Her hazel eyes returned to mine. No, she said. I came home because in 3 weeks, I'm supposed to take him away from here. You're taking him to Raleigh? I asked. Claire glanced toward the kitchen window. If I can convince him. Does Henry know there's convincing to be done? No, I must not have hidden my reaction. Her posture stiffened. You think I'm interfering. I think your father would rather negotiate with a firing squad than be surprised. That's why I need to have the conversation in person. The back door opened before I could respond. Henry held up a bandage. Found it. Were you two discussing me? Yes, Claire said. No, I said at the same time. His eyes narrowed. You'll need to coordinate better if this is going to work. Claire took the bandage from him and pressed it into my palm. 6:30, Jake. Then she followed her father inside. I spent the next several hours telling myself dinner was just dinner. At 6:15, I changed my shirt for the 3rd time. Henry answered his door wearing a blue button-down and an expression of deep satisfaction. You own an iron, he said. I'm going home. Too late, she saw you through the window. From the kitchen, Claire called, He's lying, but you should still come in. She had changed too. Her hair was down now, falling just past her shoulders, and she wore a soft green sweater that made her eyes look brighter. I suddenly became aware that I was holding a bottle of wine like an offering. Claire glanced at it. You clean up adequately. Henry gave me a knowing look. I pointed at him. This is your fault. Most good things are. Dinner began comfortably enough. Henry's chili could have removed paint, but Claire had made cornbread with honey, and every time our hands brushed, reaching for the basket, she smiled as if neither of us believed it was accidental. She asked about my work. I told her about the walnut dining table I was building for a couple celebrating their 40th anniversary. What makes a table worth waiting 40 years for? She asked. The people sitting around it. Henry looked at Claire. Claire looked at me. I concentrated very hard on my chili. Then Henry asked, "How's the clinic?" Claire set down her spoon. "Busy. We've expanded the neurological rehabilitation program. You still working Saturdays?" "Sometimes." "Too much." She gave him a faint smile. "That's interesting coming from the man rebuilding a fence on one good knee." The air changed. Henry leaned back. "My knee is fine. You had trouble standing up after church last month. I was sitting in a low pew, and you fell in the garage." My attention shifted to Henry. He shot me a warning look. "I slipped twice," Claire said. He went still. "Who told you Mrs. Alvarez saw the second one?" "That woman monitors the street like hostile territory. She was worried. So am I." Henry folded his napkin with precise, unnecessary care. Claire inhaled. "I want you to spend a few months with me in Raleigh. There's a rehabilitation center near my apartment. You can strengthen your knee, see a specialist, and we can decide what comes next." "We." "Yes, we. I'm not a group project." "No one said you were. You planned this without asking me. I researched options. That isn't the same thing. It feels the same from this side of the table." I wanted to disappear into my chair, but Claire turned to me. "You've seen him favoring that knee, haven't you?" Henry's gaze landed on me next. "There are no correct answers when two people you like ask you to betray the other one." "I've seen it," I admitted, "but I've also seen him work around it." "That isn't an answer," Claire said. "It's the honest one." Henry nodded once. Claire pushed back from the table. "Excuse me." She carried her plate into the kitchen. A moment later, the back door opened and closed. Henry stared into his bowl. "You knew she was worried," I said. "She worries professionally. She's your daughter professionally, too." That earned me a glare. I stood. "I'm going to check on her." "I assumed you would." Claire was sitting on the back steps, arms wrapped around her knees. The newly repaired fence stood pale in the moonlight. I sat beside her, leaving a respectful foot between us. "You're angry with me," I said. "I'm deciding." "Take your time." She looked over. "You could have supported me." "I could have agreed with you. That isn't always support." Her gaze returned to the yard. "You sounded exactly like him. I'm considerably better looking." She tried not to smile. "Marginally," she said. "I'll take it." The quiet between us softened. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice. Through the kitchen window, Henry could be seen deliberately giving us privacy while pretending to wash the same bowl for several minutes. Claire noticed too. "He's impossible. He loves you. That's what makes it hard." I waited. Her voice dropped. "My mother died 6 years ago. It was sudden. A brain aneurysm. I was in graduate school 3 hours away. Dad called that morning because she'd been complaining of a headache." She rubbed her palms over her sleeves. "I told him it was probably a migraine. I had an exam." By the time I got to the hospital, she didn't finish. I moved closer slowly enough to give her a choice. She leaned into me. Her head rested against my shoulder, and I felt some guarded part of her finally go quiet. "You couldn't have known," I said. "I know that here," she tapped her temple. "The rest of me hasn't caught up. So every time he gets hurt, you hear that phone call again." She nodded. I understood then. Raleigh wasn't just about Henry's knee. It was Claire trying to outrun the worst day of her life. "I fix things," I told her. She glanced up. "Furniture. Everything I can. After my fiancé left, I remodeled half my house. New floors, new cabinets, rebuilt the porch twice. Was it structurally unsound?" "The first porch was fine." Her mouth curved. I thought if I kept improving the place I continued, it would prove I wasn't the reason she left. Did it work? No, but I have an exceptional porch. Claire laughed softly, and the sound warmed the space between us. Then her expression became serious. Were you the reason I was part of it? I made myself useful instead of available. If she was upset, I solved problems. If she wanted to talk, I built something. And now I'm sitting on cold steps talking about it with a woman I met under a falling fence. That does sound like growth. I'm very proud. Her eyes held mine. We had moved closer without either of us acknowledging it. Her knee touched mine. A strand of hair had caught against her cheek, and I brushed it back before I could overthink the gesture. She didn't pull away. Instead, her hand closed lightly around my wrist. "Dad planned tonight," she whispered. "I know, but this part is mine." Claire kissed me. It was gentle at first, almost questioning. Then I cupped her cheek and she leaned in, choosing me with a certainty that stole the breath from my lungs. When we parted, she stayed close, her forehead against mine. "Well," I murmured, "that was extremely adequate." She laughed against my mouth and kissed me once more. This time, Henry knocked loudly on the kitchen window. Claire covered her face. "I'm putting him in the first facility I find. He'll escape within an hour." We stood, but before I could open the door, she caught my hand. "I go back to Raleigh tomorrow," she said. "I know, and if I persuade him to come with me, I may not be back for a long time." I threaded my fingers through hers. "Then I'll drive to Raleigh." Her expression changed. Hope, fear, and something deeper mixing in her eyes. "We met this morning," she said, "and I'm not asking you for forever tonight." "What are you asking for?" "A chance." She studied me for a long moment. Then she squeezed my hand. "Come to Raleigh next Saturday," she said. "No fathers, no fences, a real date." I smiled. "I'd like that." Claire opened the door, still holding my hand. Henry stood on the other side. He looked at our joined fingers, then at us. "Good," he said, "because there's one more thing both of you need to know." Claire's smile vanished. Henry's didn't. "I'm not moving to Raleigh," he said. "I'm putting this house up for sale, and I've already decided where I'm going." Claire released my hand. "You're selling the house?" Henry's confidence faltered, but only for a second. "That is generally what putting it up for sale means." "Where are you going?" 40 acres outside Charlottesville, her face drained of color. Henry let the silence sit just long enough. "An independent living community," he added, "not the wilderness." Claire stared at him. "You let me think you were moving into a cabin." "I was clarifying. You were enjoying yourself a little." I covered a laugh with a cough. She pointed at me. "Do not encourage him." Henry invited us back to the table and produced a glossy brochure from a drawer. The community was designed for retired military personnel and their spouses. Private cottages, shared dining facilities, a fitness center, medical staff, and Henry tapped the page twice. "A woodworking shop. It's less than an hour away," he said. "I toured it last week." "You drove there without telling me." "I'm 67, Claire, not 8. And the falls are why I toured it." That silenced her. Henry leaned forward. "I heard what the doctor said. I know this house is becoming too much, but I'm not moving into your apartment and letting you rearrange your life around me." "You wouldn't be rearranging it. You already have." She looked down. Henry's tone softened. "Your mother and I raised you to have a life, not to spend it waiting for one of us to need you." Claire blinked rapidly. I reached beneath the table and found her hand. She held on without looking at me. "I should have told you sooner," Henry admitted. "I was waiting until I had made a decision." "You mean until I couldn't argue?" "That was a secondary benefit." Claire laughed once, but it broke in the middle. Henry came around the table and wrapped his arms around her. For all her frustration, she folded into him instantly. Watching them, I understood why Henry had arranged our meeting. Not because he thought his daughter needed a man. He wanted her to see that his leaving the house didn't mean she was losing him. He was choosing what came next, and perhaps giving her permission to do the same. When I left that night, Claire walked me to my porch. We stood beneath the light I had installed after rebuilding it the second time. "So this is the exceptional porch," she said. "I'd give you the tour, but it's very exclusive." "How exclusive?" "You need to kiss the owner." She stepped onto the first stair, putting us nearly eye to eye. "That seems like an unethical admissions policy." "I'm open to negotiation." She took the front of my shirt and kissed me. There was nothing tentative about it this time. I backed against the porch post, laughing against her lips as she rose onto her toes. When she pulled away, we were both breathing harder. "Application accepted," I said. "Good. I expect full access next time." The promise in those words followed me into the house. Over the next week, Claire and I texted constantly. She sent me a picture of her morning coffee with the message, "Failed to dissolve the spoon. Your reputation remains intact." I sent back a photo of the dining table in my workshop. 40 years in the making, she asked. 6 weeks. The marriage did most of the work. On Tuesday night, we talked on the phone for 2 hours. On Wednesday, 3. By Thursday, Henry started coming over to my workshop under increasingly weak pretenses. "You're pacing," he said while I sanded a cabinet door. "I'm working." "You sanded that corner 15 minutes ago." "You're unusually observant for an elderly man." He smiled. "She likes you." "I like her." Saying it aloud felt more significant than it should have. Henry's expression turned serious. "Then don't treat her like something you can repair." I set down the sandpaper. "She spent 6 years trying to solve grief," he continued. "She needs someone willing to stand beside her while she figures out what she wants. I'm not asking her to change anything." "You might not have to ask." That stayed with me. Saturday morning, I drove to Raleigh. Claire met me outside a used bookstore wearing a navy dress, ankle boots, and a smile that made the 90-minute drive feel embarrassingly reasonable. "You came," she said. "You sound surprised." I was at least 12% unsure. "I appreciate your confidence." She hugged me, and I caught the citrus scent I remembered from the fence. When she started to pull back, I kept one arm around her waist. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Hello, properly," I said. Then I kissed her on the sidewalk. Claire smiled against my mouth. That reduced uncertainty to 4%. Our date lasted all day. We browsed books and argued about whether owning 3 copies of the same novel constituted a problem. We ate lunch from a food truck and walked through the botanical garden, where Claire corrected the anatomical inaccuracy of a metal sculpture, and I pretended that ruined it for me. At dinner, she stole roasted potatoes from my plate. "You have your own," I said. "Yours were emotionally neglected. They were beside me for 8 seconds." Exactly. It felt effortless. That frightened me more than difficulty would have. After dinner, we walked along a quiet street near her apartment. The air was cool, and she slipped her hand into the pocket of my jacket, threading her fingers through mine inside it. "I haven't had a day like this in a long time," she said. "What kind of day one, where I wasn't measuring what someone needed from me?" I stopped beneath a street lamp. "Claire, I need you to know something." The guarded look returned to her eyes. "I don't want you to move back because of Henry, and I don't want you to stay in Raleigh because you think choosing me would be another obligation." Her fingers tightened around mine. "Those aren't the only options." "No, but I heard what your father said. I don't want to become another person you arrange your life around." She was quiet. Then she led me to a bench beneath an oak tree. "There's something I didn't tell either of you," she said. "My clinic offered me a director position." "That's good, isn't it?" "It's in Portland." The distance settled between us. "When do you have to decide?" "Monday." "And what do you want?" "I don't know." She looked frustrated by her own answer. "It's the job I've been working toward, but after Dad fell, I thought I should turn it down. Then I met you, and suddenly Raleigh didn't feel temporary anymore. One date and you're planning your career around me. I knew this shirt was effective." She laughed, but tears shone in her eyes. I took both her hands. "Go, if you want the job." Her face changed. "That easily?" "It isn't easy." I forced myself to say the rest. "I've spent all week counting the hours until I could see you. I already know tomorrow is going to feel worse because today happened." Then why tell me to go? Because if this has a chance, I want it to be between two people who chose their own lives, not two people who gave them up out of fear. She searched my face. My ex said my work made me unavailable. I continued. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she also wanted me to sell the shop and follow her career wherever it went. I almost did it, because I thought sacrifice proved love. And now, I think love should make both lives bigger. Her eyes softened. You keep saying, if this has a chance, she whispered. It does. How do you know? I drew her closer until her knees touched mine. Because I don't want to fix you. I want to know you. Claire kissed me beneath the oak tree, slowly, deeply. Her hand slid into my hair, and every careful thought I'd had disappeared beneath the warmth of her mouth. When we finally separated, she rested her forehead against mine. I'm still going to consider Portland, she said. I know, and I'm not making any promises tonight. I'm not asking for one. She stood and held out her hand. I took it. We walked the final block to her building in comfortable silence. At the entrance, I expected her to say goodnight. Instead, she unlocked the door, then turned to face me. The day doesn't have to end here, she said. My heart kicked hard. Are you sure? Claire stepped close, slipped both hands beneath my jacket, and looked directly into my eyes. This part is mine too, Jake. Then she pulled me inside. Claire's apartment was small, warm, and unmistakably hers. Books were stacked beneath the windows. A mug held pens on the coffee table. Anatomical charts hung beside framed photographs, including one of Claire between her parents, all three laughing into the wind at a beach. She caught me looking at it. That was 6 months before Mom died. You look like her. Dad says I argue like her. He means that as a compliment. I know. The playfulness left her face for a moment. She looked uncertain. I touched her cheek. We can slow down. I've been slowing down for 6 years. Then she kissed me. We didn't rush after that. Later, with the room dark and her head resting over my heart, she traced the scar on my palm from the fence. This happened the day we met, she said. A brutal injury I may never recover. It required one bandage. An exceptional courage. She smiled, but her fingers remained wrapped around mine. What happens Monday, she asked. You decide about Portland. I meant us. The honest answer scared me, so I gave it to her. I don't want to date anyone else. She lifted her head. Neither do I, she said. Then we start there, Virginia and possibly Oregon. I own a phone, you own a phone. I have a truck with excellent cup holders. That's practically an infrastructure plan. I pulled her closer. We'll figure it out. On Monday afternoon, she called me at the workshop. I accepted the position. She said the words hurt, even though I had told her to go. When do you start? 6 weeks. I stared at the unfinished table in front of me. 6 weeks was nothing. 6 weeks was the time it took to turn raw wood into something people expected to keep for generations. I'm proud of you, I said. Are you? Yes. A pause followed. I wish you sounded happier. I'm trying to sound like the man who believes love makes lives bigger. And what does the other man sound like? He's less articulate. Let me hear him. I closed my eyes. He wants you here. Her breath caught. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't go, I added. Right. I knew immediately I had lost the moment. Still, we tried. For 6 weeks, every weekend belonged to us. Sometimes I drove to Raleigh. Sometimes she came to Virginia and stayed at my house. Claire claimed half my bathroom counter without discussion. She left a sweater over the back of my desk chair and bought decent coffee from my kitchen, which I regarded as an act of war. We learned each other in ordinary ways. She slept with one foot outside the blanket. I needed music playing while I cooked. She read the final page of a novel first, which nearly ended the relationship. I organized the dishwasher with a precision she called deeply troubling. We also learned the harder things. When Claire was afraid, she made plans for everyone. When I was afraid, I buried myself in work. One Thursday, I missed our nightly call because I stayed late finishing a sideboard. The next morning, she said, "You could have sent a message. You knew I was working." That's not the same as knowing you're choosing not to call. I wasn't choosing against you. You disappear into that shop whenever something feels uncertain. She was right. I resented her for being right. We apologized. We kept trying. Henry sold his house during the 5th week. The buyers were a young couple expecting their first child. Henry approved of them because the husband examined the repaired fence and said, "Whoever set these posts knew what he was doing." Henry moved into his cottage the weekend before Claire was due to leave for Portland. She came home to help. By Saturday night, the house next door was empty except for a box of cleaning supplies and the dining table Henry had decided to leave for the new owners. Claire and I sat on the living room floor eating pizza from the box. "I used to do homework right there," she said, pointing to an empty corner. Mom had a chair by the window. Dad pretended to read the newspaper while listening to our conversations. I have never once seen him pretend not to listen. He's gotten lazy in retirement. She leaned against me. I wrapped an arm around her. The bare room made every silence echo. "My flight leaves Tuesday morning," she said. "I know. You could come to Portland in October." "I will. And Christmas? We'll figure it out." She sat up. "You keep saying that, because we will." "How?" The question hung between us. She stood and crossed to the window. Beyond it, the fence we had repaired marked the edge of the dark yard. "I need more than plane tickets, Jake. What are you asking me to say?" "I don't know. That's the problem." I got to my feet. "You chose the job. I supported you. You gave me permission to leave. That's not what I did. It's what it felt like. What did you want for me to ask you to give up the biggest opportunity of your career after one date?" "No." She turned toward me, eyes bright. "I wanted to know. It would cost you something." "It costs me every day." "Then why do I only hear that when I drag it out of you?" Because usefulness was still easier than vulnerability. Because I could build a table for strangers and trust it to hold. But asking someone to build a life with me felt like handing them the tools to dismantle mine. I stepped closer. "I'm in love with you," I said. Claire went completely still. "I have been fighting the urge to say that for weeks because it's too soon, and you're leaving, and I don't know how any of this works. But I love you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I love you too." Relief and grief hit me at the same time. I pulled her into my arms. She clung to me, and when I kissed her, it wasn't tentative or playful. It was 6 weeks of longing, fear, and everything we hadn't known how to say. We stood in the empty house, holding each other, as if love alone could shorten 3,000 miles. When the kiss ended, Claire kept her hands against my chest. "Come with me," she whispered. The request struck directly at the life I had built. My business is here. I know. My clients, my shop. I know. I saw hurt enter her face and hated myself for causing it. "I'm not saying no," I said. "You're listing reasons you can't before asking how you could. That isn't fair. Neither is asking me to believe distance will magically solve itself. What do you want me to do? Close the shop? Sell my house? I want you to want something strongly enough to risk being inconvenienced." The words landed hard. "You think I don't take risks?" "I think you build beautiful, solid things because they don't leave unless you carry them out." I stepped back. Claire looked as if she wished she could take it back, but we both knew there was truth in it. She picked up her coat. "I'm going to stay with Dad tonight." "Claire, I love you." Her voice broke. "But I can't be the only one willing to build a life somewhere unfamiliar." She left me standing in the empty room. Henry found me an hour later, sitting on the floor beside the cold pizza. He lowered himself carefully against the wall. "She told you to go to Portland," he said. "Yes. And you gave her an inventory of your equipment." I looked at him. "Did she call you?" "No. I know you. You've known me 11 months. Long enough." I rubbed both hands over my face. "I can't abandon everything because we've known each other 6 weeks." "No one said abandon. She asked me to move across the country." Henry nodded toward the repaired fence visible through the window. "When that fence fell, you didn't stand in my yard listing all the reasons it couldn't be fixed. You looked at what could be saved, replaced what couldn't, and built from there. A relationship isn't a fence. No, it matters more. He pushed himself to his feet. At the doorway, he paused. You told her love should make both lives bigger, he said. Maybe it's time you stop using that sentence to hide from changing yours. After he left, I walked home and entered my workshop. The room smelled of walnut cedar and every safe choice I had made. Claire wasn't asking me to destroy it. She was asking whether there was room in my plans for hers. I opened my laptop and searched for woodworking cooperatives in Portland, then freight companies, commercial, studio rentals, flights. At 2 a.m, I found a listing for a shared workshop 10 minutes from Claire's new clinic. I stared at the button marked Contact Owner. Then I clicked it. The workshop owner replied at 7 the next morning. He had space available for 3 months, possibly longer. The rent was reasonable, the equipment was professional grade, and he liked the photographs of my work. By 8, I had called a carpenter I trusted about sharing my Virginia shop. By 9, I had a spreadsheet. By 10, I realized I was doing exactly what Claire had accused me of doing. I was building a solution before having the conversation. So I closed the laptop and drove to Henry's new cottage. He answered, wearing sweatpants and holding a mug that read, "Retired, not expired." "You look terrible," he said. "I was up all night. Better reason than being out all night, I suppose." Inside his cottage was bright and comfortable. Books already filled the shelves, photographs covered the mantel, and his military medals hung near a framed picture of his wife. Henry poured me coffee. "I found a shared workshop in Portland," I said. "I could rent space for 3 months, keep my house here, share my current shop, and see whether there's a market for my work out there." That sounds sensible, which worries me. It should. I don't want Claire thinking I'm doing this because she forced me. Henry sat across from me. "Did she?" "No." "Do you want to go?" The question was harder than it should have been. "I want to wake up beside her," I said. "I want to hear her complain about my dishwasher. I want to know how her first day goes without getting the shortened version over the phone." Henry's expression softened. "I want to be part of her life," I continued, "not just a voice she calls at night. Portland scares me, but losing her because I refuse to consider it scares me more. Then tell her that not the spreadsheet." I looked at him. "You knew this was going to happen when you introduced us. I hoped you'd have dinner. You orchestrated a transcontinental relationship. I may have underestimated the logistics." The front door opened. Claire stepped inside carrying a paper bag. "Dad, you forgot your—" She stopped when she saw me. Henry stood, took the bag from her, and peered inside. "Blueberry muffins," he said. I should forget things more often. Then he walked toward the bedroom. Claire frowned. "Where are you going?" "To be absent, Dad." His door closed. Claire and I faced each other across the living room. Her eyes looked tired. "I came by your house this morning. I was here. I worked that out. I'm quick, but you've always been good with measurements." She almost smiled. "I'm sorry," she said. "What I said about you being unwilling to risk inconvenience was cruel. It was also partly true. No, you built your business from nothing. You've taken risks. They're just not the risks I wanted. I wasn't honest with you either. When you asked me to come, I heard your question as an ultimatum. It wasn't. I know that now." She folded her arms, protecting herself. "What was it?" "An invitation." The room went quiet. I crossed to her, but stopped before touching her. "I'm not selling my house or closing my shop. Not yet. But I found a cooperative workspace 10 minutes from your clinic. They'll rent to me for 3 months. Hope flickered across her face, quickly restrained. "Jake, you don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving it. I'm choosing it." Her eyes filled. "I'll come out 3 weeks after you," I said. "I'll keep taking commissions and find out whether Portland has room for my work. At the end of 3 months, we decide what comes next together. What if you hate it? Then I'll tell you. What if your business suffers? I'll adjust. What if we discover we were better at weekends? That would hurt." I stepped closer, but I'd rather risk discovering the truth than protect myself with distance. A tear slid down her cheek. "You made a spreadsheet, didn't you?" she asked. "A very good one." She laughed through her tears. "I love you," I said. Not enough to erase myself, enough to imagine another version of my life. Claire closed the remaining distance and wrapped her arms around me. I held her tightly, my face buried in her hair. "I don't need you to promise Portland forever," she whispered. "Good. I left that column blank." She pulled back and kissed me. Henry's new cottage, like his old house, offered very little privacy. Still, Claire kissed me until I forgot where we were. When we separated, she kept her arms around my neck. "Come to Portland," she said. "Yes. Bring the exceptional coffee." "That may be too much commitment this early." She kissed me again. From the bedroom, Henry called, "There are muffins getting stale." Claire rested her forehead against mine. He was listening. He's retired. He needs hobbies. Tuesday morning, Henry and I drove her to the airport. At security, Claire hugged her father, then turned to me. 3 weeks, she said. 22 days. That's more than 3 weeks. My freight pickup is on day 21. She slipped something into my palm. It was the key to her apartment. "Full access," she said. I closed my fingers around it and kissed her goodbye. 3 weeks later, I arrived in Portland with 2 suitcases, a crate of hand tools, and no certainty beyond the woman waiting outside baggage claim. For the first month, I worked at a borrowed bench while she learned a job that challenged her in every possible way. We argued about money shelf space and whose turn it was to buy groceries. We also learned how to stay. When I withdrew into work, she knocked on the workshop door. When she started arranging my choices for me, I reminded her that love wasn't triage. At the end of 3 months, I renewed the workspace lease. At 6 months, I hired an assistant. The carpenter sharing my Virginia shop became my business partner, allowing us to take commissions on both coasts. Henry visited in the spring. His knee was stronger, and he spent most of the trip telling Portlanders their rain was unambitious compared with a proper Virginia storm. 1 year after I followed Claire west, we bought a small craftsman house together. It needed repairs. Naturally, I loved it. The back fence leaned badly enough that Henry declared it an insult to gravity. During his next visit, the 3 of us went outside with cedar boards, concrete, and clamps. Halfway through, Henry deliberately wandered off to inspect the gate, leaving Claire and me holding the same fence panel. "This feels familiar," she said. "I'm dressed better this time." Marginally. I set down my end and reached into my tool bag. Her teasing expression disappeared when she saw the ring. I had planned a speech. Instead, I looked at the woman who had taught me that love wasn't something you preserved by refusing to move. "I don't know exactly where we'll be in 40 years, I said, "but I want to build every version of home with you." Claire lowered the fence panel. "Jake, are you asking me to marry you while we're standing in wet concrete?" "It's structurally symbolic." She laughed, cried, and dropped to her knees beside me. "Yes." I slid the ring onto her finger. Then she kissed me. Sawdust on my shirt, mud on her jeans, Henry cheering from the gate. By sunset, the fence stood straight. Claire stood between Henry and me, one arm around each of us, her ring catching the last gold light. Behind us was a house, still waiting to become a home. And ahead of us was a life neither of us had needed to make smaller. What would you have done if your veteran neighbor had introduced you to his daughter while you were holding up his broken fence? Would you have taken the same chance I did? Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter, exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.